Who gives his scarf to a stranger on a freezing night, not knowing she's a single mom of 6-year-old twins working 2 jobs just to survive? Ethan Carrington wasn't looking to save anyone, just heading home in his luxury car when he spotted her at the bus stop, shivering in a thin coat. He handed her his scarf without a second thought. But what he didn't expect was to see her again, mopping the lobby of his company the very next morning. What began as an act of kindness would unravel into a story of resilience, quiet love, and a mother's fight to give her children the life they deserve. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The wind bit through his coat the moment Ethan stepped out of the building. December in the city had turned from brisk to brutal in just a matter of hours, and despite his driver waiting at the curb, he paused for a breath of sharp night air. Meetings had dragged on late again. Too many hands to shake, too many fake smiles to return. It was one of those nights when wealth felt less like a reward and more like a burden. He didn't know why he told the driver to take the long way home. Maybe it was the cold that made him restless. Maybe it was the quiet loneliness that always crept in this time of year. But as they turned onto a side street near the industrial district, something made him look out the window, and that's when he saw her. A woman. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Sitting at the bus stop with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, trying to stay warm. Her coat looked thin, secondhand. Her cheeks were red, fingers trembling, eyes downcast as if she was trying to disappear into herself. He told the driver to stop. "What?" the man asked, confused. "Just a second." Ethan stepped out, pulling off his scarf as he crossed the sidewalk. She didn't notice him until he was right in front of her. "Hey," he said gently, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, startled anyway. Her face was tired, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Exhaustion layered over worry like a film that wouldn't wash off. "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly, defensively. "I know," he replied. "But you look like you could use this more than I can." He held out the scarf. She hesitated. "I'm fine, really." "You're shivering." She blinked, unsure. But the scarf looked warm, and her pride was clearly losing a battle against the wind. "I don't have anything to give you in return. I didn't ask for anything." Her fingers brushed his as she took it. The moment was brief, just 2 strangers in the night, but it left something unspoken in the air. "Thank you," she said, her voice quieter now. "Really?" He nodded once. "Stay warm." He didn't ask her name. Didn't offer his. He just turned back to the car, slid inside, and drove away, assuming he'd never see her again. But fate, as it turned out, had other plans. The next morning, Marissa Reed was already on her feet by 5 a.m. She tiptoed around the tiny apartment, careful not to wake the twins as she got dressed in the hallway. The scarf, that beautiful cashmere soft scarf, was folded gently on the back of the couch. She hadn't had the heart to wear it to work. Not when cleaning chemical smells would cling to it. Not when her boss would raise an eyebrow. She kissed the kids on their foreheads before slipping out the door. Work was a blur. Floors to mop. Trash to take out. Coffee spills in conference rooms and muddy footprints in the executive lobby. She moved on autopilot, arms aching from the night shift she'd just finished at the diner. Her life was a patchwork of exhaustion and survival, stitched together with after-school pickups, unpaid bills, and whispered bedtime stories she barely had the energy to tell. At 8:55, just as she was finishing the second-floor hallway, the elevators chimed. Marissa didn't look up right away. She was too busy scrubbing scuff marks from the tile when a voice behind her said, "Excuse me." She turned and almost dropped her mop. He was there. The man from the night before, dressed in a tailored navy coat, crisp white shirt. No tie. His hair was still slightly tousled, like he'd run a hand through it on the way in. He looked different in daylight, more polished, less mysterious, but she recognized him instantly. His eyes widened slightly. Not in disgust. Not even in surprise. More like recognition. His gaze flicked to the scarf poking out from her tote bag, then back to her face. "Good morning," he said, almost cautiously. She swallowed. "Hi." Neither of them spoke for a beat. Then someone stepped out of the elevator behind him, a man in a headset and suit. "Mr. Carrington," the assistant said. "Boardroom's ready." Her heart stopped. "Mr. Carrington?" Her stomach dropped. He wasn't just a stranger with kind eyes and a warm scarf. He was Ethan Carrington, CEO of Carrington Holdings, owner of the building, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. And she had accepted charity from him without even knowing who he was. He didn't say anything else, just gave her the faintest nod, one that wasn't cold but also wasn't intimate, and disappeared down the hall. Marissa stood frozen, her hand clenched around the mop. She wanted to run, to disappear, to cry maybe, but instead she picked up the bucket and moved on. Because she had rent to pay. Because there were 2 small lunchboxes in the fridge at home and kids who'd be waiting for her after school. Because pride, no matter how bruised, didn't feed your children. That night, she told the twins a story. Not about scarves or CEOs. About a kind stranger who gave someone something warm when they needed it most. And about how sometimes that's enough. She didn't know that across the city, Ethan Carrington was still thinking about her. He couldn't explain it. He met people every day, polished, powerful, poised, but something about her eyes had stayed with him. The way she'd held herself even in exhaustion. The quiet strength. The fire she'd hidden under fatigue. He didn't know her name. Not yet. But he found himself hoping that scarf was keeping her warm and wondering what it would take to see her again. The next morning came with a fresh sting of cold, and Marissa tucked the scarf around her neck as she left the apartment, knowing it would hold his scent, clean, expensive, like cedar and winter. She hadn't meant to wear it. But the heat in their unit had stopped working again, and the twins had been too quiet during breakfast, tired from the broken night's sleep and the cheap space heater humming in the corner of their room. The scarf somehow felt like armor. She arrived early to the building, as always. Her shoes squeaked faintly on the marble floors as she polished the lobby, avoiding eye contact with the early executive arrivals. Every time the elevator dinged, her breath caught. But he didn't appear. Not until much later, as she was loading paper towels into the janitor's cart by the vending machine. She turned, and there he was. Ethan Carrington. He wasn't looking at her this time. Just waiting for the elevator with one hand in his coat pocket, scrolling through something on his phone. She should have turned away. Pretended not to see him. But the moment stretched too long. He glanced up. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. But something passed between them, not warmth exactly, not recognition, but awareness. He hadn't forgotten. And neither had she. Later that day, Ethan found himself distracted during a strategy meeting. Someone was explaining Q1 projections and growth forecasts, but his mind was still back in the lobby. He shouldn't have been thinking about her. He didn't even know her name. She was just a cleaner. Just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time to receive a scarf. But there was something about the way she carried herself. Unapologetic despite the tired eyes. Her presence had lingered longer than he expected. So he asked for a list. Discreetly. Names of contracted cleaning staff. He claimed it was for security updates. Technically, it wasn't a lie. It took an assistant 15 minutes to compile. Marissa Reed. 29. Single. 2 dependents. Ethan read the brief line 3 times. 2 children. And suddenly it all made sense, the exhaustion, the tension in her shoulders, the deep shadows under her eyes. He closed the folder and said nothing. By Thursday evening, the building was almost empty. Marissa's shift was quiet, just the sound of vacuums, the echo of her cartwheels, and the occasional clack of distant heels on tile. She just finished the executive lounge when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw him. He wasn't wearing a coat this time. Just a soft gray sweater and dark trousers. More casual than usual. Still intimidating. "Hi," he said. She blinked. "Mr. Carrington. You don't have to call me that." She hesitated. "I think I do." He gave a faint smile. "Fair." There was an awkward pause. She didn't know if she was supposed to keep working or stand still. So she did neither, just gripped the handle of her mop a little tighter and waited. I wanted to ask your name, he said. The other night I should have asked. Her lips parted slightly. Marissa. Reed. He nodded. Nice to officially meet you, Marissa. She tilted her head, unsure. Why? Why what? Why are you talking to me? He was quiet for a moment. Then, because you looked like you needed someone to. I don't, she said quickly. I'm fine. I didn't mean that in a patronizing way. Just, I've been there. She arched an eyebrow. You've been stuck at a bus stop in a $5 coat after working 2 jobs? He didn't flinch. No, but I've known what it feels like to be alone. That disarmed her more than she expected. She looked down. I didn't even say thank you properly. You did, he said. You took the scarf. He moved like he was about to walk away, then stopped. Do your kids like hot chocolate? Her eyes snapped up. Excuse me. I'm sorry, he said quickly. That came out wrong. I just meant we're hosting a family day event this weekend. My team organized it for employees and their kids. Games, food, warm things. It's not public, but you're welcome. I'm not staff, she said flatly. He shrugged. You work here, don't you? She looked at him like he was crazy. I don't have clothes for something like that, she said. Or time. I work Saturday nights. There'll be coats, gloves, donations. No name tags. No expectations. Marissa hesitated. She thought about her twins, Emily and Jacob, and how their eyes lit up any time someone so much as offered them stickers or free coloring books. She hadn't been able to give them a real Christmas event in years. Her second job took most weekends, and even then it wasn't enough to buy much. I'll think about it, she said quietly. He nodded. That's all I ask. That Saturday she almost didn't come. Her boss at the diner had added an unexpected shift. The kids had outgrown their winter boots, and the idea of walking into a space where she didn't belong again made her chest tight. But just before noon, she found herself helping Jacob zip his coat while Emily clutched a worn teddy bear. They arrived late, and the first thing Marissa noticed was how no one looked at her sideways. Kids were laughing. Parents in jeans and winter hats mingled over cider. Volunteers handed out gloves, scarves, even new backpacks. There was a photo booth, a storytime tent, a cookie table, and hot chocolate with real whipped cream. Her twins beamed like she hadn't seen in months. She stood off to the side, unsure what to do with her hands, until someone approached. Ethan. He was helping a boy tape a paper crown together, crouched low, sleeves rolled, a snowflake stuck to his shoulder. When he saw her, he smiled. You came. She nodded, arms folded. They wanted to. He looked at her. And you. Marissa followed the sound of her daughter's giggle. I didn't want them to miss it. I'm glad, he said. He didn't ask anything else. Just offered her a cup of cocoa and let the silence be comfortable. Later, as the kids decorated sugar cookies, Marissa caught herself smiling. And when Ethan caught her smile, he smiled too, not like a CEO, but like someone remembering how. The twins were asleep by 8, curled up together on the couch with the scarves they'd won in a raffle still draped around their shoulders. Marissa didn't have the heart to wake them just yet. The day had been too sweet, too rare. She watched them for a long moment, her fingers absently rubbing the side of her paper cup from the event. Ethan's voice still lingered in her ears, soft, unforced, not filled with pity or power, just presence. He hadn't tried to impress her, hadn't made any gestures bigger than cocoa and crowns. And yet, something had shifted. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her world had been defined by repetition for so long, work, kids, bills, work, that the idea of someone stepping into it with warmth instead of judgment felt unreal. Dangerous, even, because hope was risky. Hope made you imagine things you couldn't afford. Monday morning came cold and sharp again. Marissa returned to work early, hair tied back, face bare, scarf tucked safely into her locker. She didn't expect to see him, But around 9:15, as she was disinfecting the glass on the executive floor, she heard footsteps and looked up, and there he was. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not on that floor, not at that time. But maybe he knew she'd be there. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she replied, voice quieter than she wanted it to be. There was a pause. He stepped closer, careful. "I owe you an apology," Ethan said. She frowned. "For what?" "I looked into your name. Without asking." Marissa's brows knit. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I couldn't stop thinking about you. And I didn't know how else to. I don't know. I thought maybe it would help me understand." "And what did you understand?" she asked, arms crossing. "That you've been holding up the world by yourself," he said. "For two little people. And you're doing it without asking for anything. Even when it's breaking you." She didn't answer. He added, "I didn't mean to step over a line. But if I did, I'm sorry." Marissa stared at him for a long moment. "I'm used to people not seeing me," she said finally. "So when someone does, it's hard to believe it's real." "It's real," Ethan said. She blinked. And for a second, the quiet between them felt heavier than the cold air outside. By the end of the week, they'd spoken 4 more times. Briefly, quietly, in hallways near the service elevator, by the corner of the lobby where the plants were never watered quite enough. It wasn't flirtation, not yet. It was something subtler, a leaning in, a softening. He asked about the twins. She told him about Emily's love for puzzles and Jacob's obsession with space. He asked if she ever had time to draw anymore, and her answer, a surprised laugh, told him more than she meant to. She hadn't drawn in years. "Too tired," she admitted. Ethan tilted his head. "That's a shame. I think tired people make the most honest art." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But she thought about it for hours afterward. It wasn't long before the whispers started. They always did. "She's just a cleaner. She's a single mom. He's the CEO. They say he gave her a job offer. Personal. They say he picks her up after shifts. They say she's working her way into his pocket." Marissa heard them in the stairwell, in the break room, through half-closed elevator doors. First, she ignored them, but then came the sneers, then the sudden drop in hours, then the silent judgment when she entered a room. Danica, from HR, pulled her aside. "Just a heads up," she said gently. "You're getting attention, the kind that doesn't go away easily." Marissa stared at the floor. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said. "You didn't," Danica agreed. "But the higher you get pulled, the harder people push back." That night, Marissa left work an hour late. Not because she had to, because she didn't want to be seen. As she exited the building, her steps slowed. And there he was, waiting outside, leaning against a sleek black sedan, scarf wrapped tight, hands in his coat pockets. She froze. "I didn't call you," she said. "I know. You shouldn't be here. I know. But you are." He stepped forward slowly. "Do you want me to go?" She swallowed. "No," she whispered. He didn't take her home that night. They just walked, block after block, in the kind of silence that said more than talking ever could. She told him about her second job, about the babysitter who canceled too often, about the notice she got about her rent going up in March. She didn't mean to say so much, but once she started, it all came out. Ethan didn't interrupt. He just listened. And when they finally stopped beneath the flickering yellow glow of a broken street lamp, she looked up at him and said, "I'm not someone you rescue." "I'm not trying to rescue you," he replied. "Then what are you doing?" I'm trying not to lose the first real thing I've felt in years. That silenced her more than anything, because part of her wanted to believe him, and the other part already feared what would happen if she did. The next day, she found a sketch pad in her locker. Clean, new, with a note tucked between the pages. You deserve something that belongs only to you. It wasn't signed, but she knew. And later that night, once the twins were in bed and the dishes were done and the exhaustion had finally settled into her bones, she opened it and began to draw. The first thing she drew was her daughter's hands curled softly around a plastic cup of hot cocoa, sticky with marshmallow streaks. Then her son's wide-eyed wonder from the family day event, his mouth open mid-gasp at the balloon animal he'd clutched like treasure. The pencil moved like it hadn't in years, hesitant at first, then sure, as if her fingers remembered what her spirit had nearly forgotten. She was more than tired, more than poor, more than invisible. She was still an artist, and someone had reminded her of that. By the following week, Ethan didn't need excuses to see her. He'd show up unexpectedly by the coffee cart near the loading dock, ask a question he already knew the answer to just to hear her voice. They shared conversations in stolen minutes, careful, quiet, and yet charged with something no rumor could invent. A pull neither of them knew what to do with. But the rumors didn't stop. They sharpened. She's got him wrapped around her finger. She's aiming higher than the janitor's closet. She's probably playing the kid's card. Marissa heard it all. And Ethan noticed. She didn't complain, but her smile dimmed. Her shoulders tensed. She stopped wearing the scarf to work even when the wind bit her skin raw. She spoke less in passing. Stayed late, left early. Until one evening she didn't show up at all. No message. No call. Ethan paced in his office past 10. Checked her name in the contractor log blank. He even called Danica, asking if she'd heard from her. She hadn't. By midnight, he was standing outside her apartment building, heart hammering harder than it should have. She opened the door in an oversized hoodie, eyes red-rimmed, a child on each hip. One sleeping. One coughing softly into her neck. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she whispered hoarse. "I was worried." "I'm fine." "You're not. It's just the flu. They're burning up and I couldn't find a sitter," and her voice cracked. "I ran out of sick days." "You should have told someone." "And said what?" "Hi, I'm the cleaner everyone thinks is sleeping with the boss. Can I have a little more pity to go with that mop bucket?" Ethan's face went still. Marissa sighed. "I'm sorry. That was unfair." "No," he said quietly. "It was honest." She stepped aside to let him in, only because the cold wind hit too hard and the girl in her arms shivered. The apartment was small, tight, but clean and warm. He'd never been inside a place so modest, and yet he'd never felt more grounded. She laid the kids down. Jacob coughed once in his sleep and Emily stirred. Marissa tucked the blanket up to their chins, then sat on the edge of the couch like her legs had given out. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she said. "Like real life. This is the only version of you I ever wanted to know," Ethan replied. She blinked and something welled up in her throat that she couldn't speak through. "You make people talk," she whispered. "Just by being kind to me." "Then let them talk," he said, sitting across from her. "They think I'm trying to catch a man to pay my rent. They can think what they want. It's not just whispers now. I heard someone call me your pet project." He went still. Marissa laughed bitterly. "And you think a sketchbook fixes that?" "No," he said, "but standing beside you might." She looked up, startled. "I'm tired of hiding," Ethan said. "Of pretending like kindness needs to be discreet to be real. I should have defended you publicly. I didn't. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was let you feel alone again." She didn't speak. Then softly, "So what now? I want you to come to the winter gala with me." She blinked. "You're joking." "I'm not. I can't." "You can." "I don't have a dress. I don't have a sitter. I can't dance. I won't fit in you. You're the only one I want there." Her breath caught. "This will make everything worse," she whispered. "It might," he admitted. But I'd rather walk into a room with you and face the storm than stand alone in peace and wonder why I let you go. Silence. She closed her eyes and for a long time said nothing. Then, with a voice steadier than she felt, "Fine, but don't expect me to wear heels." He smiled. "Deal." The day of the gala, she stared at herself in the mirror longer than she ever had. The dress was borrowed from Danica, navy blue, off the shoulder, simple but elegant. She wore her hair twisted low, a few strands loose around her face. Her makeup was minimal, just enough to hide the sleepless nights. She looked like someone she used to dream of becoming. And when Ethan arrived to pick her up, dressed in black, sleek and stunning, he stopped in his tracks at the sight of her. "You're beautiful," he said simply. She didn't believe it, but hearing it from him made her almost want to. They entered the Grand Marlowe ballroom together. People stared. Some gasped. Others whispered. But Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't let go of her hand. When people approached him, congratulated him, or tried to steer him away, he stayed beside her. Marissa didn't say much. She nodded politely, smiled tightly, held her chin up. But inside, her heart raced. It wasn't until the awards began that things changed. Because when Ethan stepped on stage to give the final speech of the night, he paused halfway through and looked right at her. "This year has reminded me that the strongest people in this company don't always sit behind desks or wear suits," he said. "Sometimes they wipe up our spills. They quiet their own pain to comfort others. They go home after working 2 jobs to tuck in children and still show up with dignity." People glanced around. "She knows who she is," Ethan added softly. "And I want the rest of you to know her too." He stepped away from the podium and returned to his seat beside her, unbothered by the ripple of murmurs that followed. Marissa sat frozen. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just reached under the table and quietly took his hand, not because she needed saving, but because, for once, someone stood beside her without asking her to earn it. The walk back to the car felt surreal. She didn't know if it was the cold air clearing her thoughts or the way the heels clicked over pavement like they belonged to someone else. But with Ethan beside her, his coat slung over her shoulders, the world felt just a little quieter. As if somehow they'd managed to muffle the noise of every whisper behind them. He didn't speak as he opened the car door. Didn't push. Just watched her with a stillness that made her feel more seen than stared at. Once inside, she looked out the window and let the silence wrap around her like that scarf had weeks ago, unexpectedly warm. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly, eyes on the blurred lights. "Which part?" "The storm you walked into." Ethan paused, then, "Every second." She didn't answer. Not right away. But when the car pulled up in front of her apartment building, she didn't move to get out. Instead, she turned to face him. "You could have chosen anyone." "I didn't want anyone." "I'm not easy, Ethan." "I know. I come with baggage. And tantrums. And flu seasons. And nights where I cry in the laundry room so my kids don't hear me." He reached for her hand. "Marissa," he said, "I'm not afraid of real." She blinked once and her breath caught in her throat. "I can't promise perfect," she whispered. "Good," he said, squeezing her fingers. "Perfect's boring." She laughed, a quiet, fragile laugh that only came when something inside her loosened. Then she stepped out of the car. But not alone. He followed her to the door, coat still around her, no hesitation in his step. And when she opened it, 2 sleepy voices called from inside, one higher, one lower, both of them blinking up from under the blanket on the couch. "Mama," Jacob croaked. "Did you win a prize?" Emily yawned. Marissa smiled. "Better. I danced." "With a prince?" her daughter asked seriously. Ethan knelt beside them, no hesitation. "Not a prince," he said. "Just a man lucky enough to meet your mom." The twins stared at him, wide-eyed. Emily leaned close and whispered, "Are you the Coco guy?" He grinned. "Guilty." "Cool," Jacob said, instantly accepting. Marissa stared, heart-thudding. Ethan stood. "I'll go. Just wanted to make sure you got home safe." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Wait." He paused at the door. She kissed him. Soft. Quick. But not uncertain. Thank you, she said, voice low. For what? For not treating me like I was less. He brushed her cheek with his thumb. You were more from the second I saw you. Then he left. But he didn't stay gone. In the weeks that followed, everything changed and nothing did. Marissa still woke up early, still packed lunches and sorted schedules and double-checked coats before school. She still worked, though her hours shifted, and eventually so did her role. Danica called her in one day with a job offer in Creative Services Junior Coordinator, part-time, with flexibility for mothers. I didn't ask for this, Marissa said. I know, Danica replied. You earned it anyway. She began helping with community outreach campaigns, designed posters for charity drives, drew again, this time with purpose. And Ethan? He stayed steady. Not flashy, not performative, just there. Sometimes it was a quiet coffee in the morning delivered without a word. Sometimes it was helping her fix the broken cabinet door in her kitchen, sleeves rolled, refusing to let her touch a thing. Sometimes it was just him showing up to walk the twins home from school with extra gloves in his coat pocket. He didn't try to sweep her off her feet. He just stood beside her until she realized she didn't need sweeping, only steady ground. The rumors never fully stopped, but they faded, because people started to see what he saw. They saw how she lit up when she worked with kids at the donation drives, how her ideas for community art initiatives brought in more volunteers than any marketing campaign, how her voice, once soft, had a way of landing in rooms and staying. And one afternoon, months later, as the spring sun finally thawed the streets, Ethan took her hand during a public can-day at a company fundraiser. Someone in the crowd asked about leadership, about influence. And without pause, he said, you don't need a title to lead. Sometimes the strongest voice comes from the quietest person in the room. He turned, looked at her, and added, She taught me that. On the twins' 7th birthday, Marissa watched them open handmade cards from their classmates and a small box each from Ethan, a telescope for Jacob, and a huge art kit for Emily. She sat beside him on the couch after they'd gone to bed, legs tucked under her, hair undone from the long day. You never make me feel like I owe you anything, she said. You don't. I used to think love meant proving yourself worthy. He took her hand. I used to think love meant fixing things. They sat in silence, the soft glow of the night light in the hallway casting a warm haze over the room. We were both wrong, she said. And we found something better, he added. She smiled. He leaned in. No spotlight. No storm. Just a man and a woman, once strangers on a frozen night, now building something real. Not perfect, but finally theirs.